the approaches, the attitudes, and indeed a simple matter as the independent candidates. One may say that in a true sense we may have regressed as an independent candidate in the real sense contesting elections at the start. Your view on how the elections have evolved, and then telling us today how Edwin will guide us on how the numbers have stacked up. Jimmy, the evolution?
Thanks, Teddy. Good evening, everyone. Good to be back here on what is a momentous occasion for St. Lucia. I just want to, before I go any further, to echo what Rice has said. This is a very important part in the history of our country, but also our own enfranchisement. People worked hard to ensure that we have the right to vote. Prior to 1951, it was only a very small group of people who had that right to vote, and that was based on economic class, on the amount of money that they had, on their social standing. 1951 saw that change, and we've had 19, this will be the 19th election since then, and that is something that I think we should hold very, very dear to our hearts. That ability that we have to vote freely and fairly for the people who will represent us in the parliament, and who, as we know, because of the type of system of government that we have, many of them will find their way into the cabinet and be part of the executive. So that is extremely important. The whole question of independent candidates, Teddy, is such an important one. I mean, I have some personal family history in this. One of the first candidates who took part in that 1951 election was a gentleman by the name of Gilbert Mason, who contested the election as an independent candidate in Choiseul. Gilbert Mason happened to have been my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, and he won that seat in Choiseul, and then he subsequently joined the Labour Party, and he helped Sir George Charles form that government. And we've had so many independent candidates over the, if you look at the period, particularly I think up until 1964, very many independent candidates, people who sometimes aligned with political parties, sometimes not aligned entirely. Going back again to my grandfather, I remember there was an election he won in Choiseul, and he won it with a minority of the vote because there was something like 4 independent candidates and one candidate from the Labour Party. So it is very important. We do have some genuinely independent candidates this time around, but we also have independent candidates who are operating without the governing St. Lucia Labour Party fielding a candidate against them,
without the two established
parties being in place. So that's not the true independent candidate, but we do have some independent candidates. And yes, the elections have evolved. The manner in which we campaign has evolved. We were looking at a simple document, manifesto. This was a manifesto in 1982. That's not that long ago. As a United Workers' Party manifesto in 1982, black and white, nothing online, but that was a very important document back then. So the whole question of online campaigning, information being made available online, information being made available instantaneously, having been involved in a few elections of my own, remembering the novelty of having a campaign broadcast on television. Now every single local campaign, every single local meeting is on Facebook, is on YouTube. So many things have changed.
One platform or the other.
On any platform, yes.
The aspect you mentioned, independent candidates, and way back. In fact, the evolution we speak of is a situation where we have drifted and developed towards an absolutely polarized, almost tribalistic situation, which makes it very difficult for any third party, as it were, or independent candidate to thrive or emerge. And so that is a situation very common to much of the Caribbean, where the polarized situation, persons sticking to the camps, and in fact seeing the parties as options for running the country and the government, and so having little time for independence, as it were. Often the example that comes to mind is that of one of the most legendary politicians and populist in the sense to George Odlum, who failed at the attempt to run independent, and not since maybe the era of Collymore and John Compton did persons run, and even the John Compton then, they weren't the two established parties at the time. Parties were evolving, and not until his famous amalgamation and combination to form the UWP did it become the second established party. Up until then, the party was the Labour Party, and all sorts of permutations fighting against them. The development is certainly interesting. We want to look, Edwin, straight away at maybe some of the figures from this year, how we're seeing them stacking up, the number of voters registered. Are we seeing a big increase in registered voters? Has that happened across the board? What are you seeing?
Teddy, thanks for having me this evening. It should be a very, very interesting process that will unfold before our eyes. I'm sure there's a lot of anticipation. and excitement even about what's about to happen once the results start coming in at 6. So in terms of the electors, all right?
Numbers, yeah.
In terms of the numbers, we had 174,279 registered electors in 2021, and that has increased by about 2.8% in this current period, the elections that we are about to complete. And it's increased to 179,154. Okay, that is considerably higher than the total population of St. Lucia, and there are certainly issues about the efficacy of these numbers in terms of how they are compiled and what they still contain and probably should not.
Which brings us straight away, Edwin, to the contentious issue of that famous, some would say infamous, reference to voter turnout. Remember?
Yes.
That has been discussed, and many contend that it should be virtually disregarded or ignored until we get really more efficient and accurate in establishing the number of persons actually able to vote and eligible to vote on island. There's the diaspora factor, I'm sure, the persons who have in fact passed away. And so we're seeing a kind of consensus now that the voters list is not always reflective of the true situation, the number of electors. And so it is a very inaccurate reflection when one cites very often a low turnout. And so I think, certainly for the purpose of our discussion here, to minimize the importance of that figure. Jimmy, quickly, your thought on the voter turnout issue?
Well, Teddy, as you know, this is something I've been speaking about since the very first panel I sat on, which is at the Vaughan West by-election in 1996, where I looked at those numbers and going back to figures that the Department of Statistics had put out, and it just didn't mesh. When you look at the number of people who are in St. Lucia and you take out the population 18 years and below, there is no way we can have that number of registered voters. However, I will tell you that in 2006, there was a very extensive enumeration exercise that took place, a house-to-house enumeration exercise. I remember I was cabinet secretary at the time. In fact, it caused Dr. Anthony to choreograph the date for elections, because Dr. Anthony did say at the time, he was prime minister, and he did say that he would not have an election until the house-to-house enumeration exercise had been completed. So everybody knew that elections would not be held early. And if you, at that particular voters list, I think there were 2006, there were 132,000 registered voters. The number went up from 119,000 in 2001 to 132,000, and it has climbed. So you ask yourself, okay, if there was a house-to-house enumeration exercise in 2006 that established this number at 132,000, then you have to assume that there's some level of accuracy in that. So, going back to the point Edwin made, the diaspora, what is the diaspora figure? Because if somebody migrates from St. Lucia, and let's say they're living in Canada or the United States, you can't strike them off the voters list, because they will at some point come back to exercise their right to vote. So it is a very curious thing. I mean, I do know that the Electoral Department is very strict in removing dead people off the voters list. I checked with my own mother, who passed 2 years ago, and not too long after I checked the voters list to see whether she was still on, and she wasn't. So I do know that they have been doing a good job of taking people who have passed off the voters list.
No doubt in collaboration with the registry.
With the registry. But the point remains that we cannot, in a population of 185,000 people, what's the number, Edwin?
No, it's actually 171.
That's our population?
Yes.
And we have more people on the voters list than we have residents in St. Lucia. So that certainly the denominator is wrong. We cannot be measuring voter turnout on the basis of a number that is larger than the number of people who are in St. Lucia. Let's even say that maybe 10,000 people fly into St. Lucia to vote. That still would not allow us to have any kind of accuracy in that voter turnout. So I think we are being too hard on ourselves when we say voter turnout in St. Lucia is 50%. I think it's a lot higher than 50%, based on that denominator being the number of people who are eligible to vote and resident in St. Lucia.
Physically present on island. And so you alluded to the number of electors actually registered this year. As we go through the list. And RISA, we'll get back to you, Edwin, but RISA, we're speaking of the approaches we said to campaigning. Early on, the two established parties, the history that you mentioned. Jimmy touched on...
Well, there were no parties at that time. They were just by themselves, and now we grow into the affiliation with clans. And when you touched on the eligibility, I would not have been eligible to vote in 1925. So women were cut out of that completely, and we see women's role in politics very present in the campaigning. Nuawe Shaifam, Kale, Kai, Kadi, Kimunpu, Miteti Kwaubai. However, when we go into representation in terms of the candidates that we'll look at a little later on, for the 3 candidates vying for elections this year, women are underrepresented in that number. We also want to talk about our own political culture and how political parties fit into our Westminster system. Because we can talk about independence, but it's kind of unfair to actually expect them to perform well in a first-past-the-post system, but we don't have proportional representation that allows them that vantage point. So whether or not an individual would genuinely want to be independent and not affiliated with the party, the likelihood of them winning is very marginal without that kind of base and support. Because you're talking about over 50 years of building relationships, of building partnerships, and the nature of our politics is so familiar, so paternal, that persons do not necessarily sever that link between a political party, whether it is the St. Lucia Labour Party or the United Workers' Party. So these are very important points we want to bring up when we talk about that. Nous voulons, je sais nisi choisir mon asso qui m'a dit mais en même temps nous savons l'histoire différentes communes côté différents partis politiques. J'ai fait un chaque contribution pour le développement de ces différentes places là.
Yeah. And as you mentioned the growth towards adult suffrage, where there wasn't as much distinction, where persons not on the basis of property or class, property ownership or class, really 74 years now since the population could speak for itself and really truly speak for the representatives and what regime they want to choose. A simple point we want to make as we remind persons what's important tonight, the discussion, the analysis, yes, but the country, the entire diaspora, looking forward to the count of the votes. We are what, Jimmy? What do you make it? 43?
42 minutes away from the closing of the polls.
That moment when 6 o'clock, when it's all over, the campaigning.
Except people who on the line before 6 o'clock will be allowed to vote. Yes.
And so it becomes very important. Once we get to 6 o'clock, we here will be last elections very early as 6:20, 6:25, the first results came in. We're expecting no different. We saw St. Vincent just recently, very prompt and very early with the results coming in by 20 past 6, they were getting in the results. The question of the much discussed rejected ballots and spoiled ballots. Jimmy, you want to touch to them on the difference and what we think the approaches have been, should be? There's a fundamental difference.
I was a little embarrassed, Teddy, when I was watching the election results in St. Vincent to see the small number of rejected ballots that you're seeing. Granted, it's a smaller voting population, but disproportionately, we do have too many rejected ballots in our electoral system. And, it says something that at this stage we do still have so many rejected ballots. Rejected ballots being a ballot where somebody has not placed that X in the manner in which they were supposed to have placed it. The lines don't intersect. It's not very clear where they voted. It might be crisscrossing, it might be overlapping you have 2 people on a ballot, and maybe the where that X is, it's not clear who you're voting for. You don't put an X, you put a tick, you put something, you must have an X. And I think that is something that it's so fundamental to our voting, but still there are so many ballots that are rejected that it's sad, because it means that people have gone to the polls, they have exercise their franchise. I don't think people have deliberately, maybe there might be 1 or 2 instances where somebody does not want to vote for a candidate. So their way of showing up and voting is to deliberately, I don't want to use the word spoil, because a spoiled ballot is different, but in protest they have caused that ballot to not be valid. But there are so many people who go and they exercise that franchise, and for their vote to not be counted, it really is something that we have to pay attention to. If you're not used to putting an X, muscle memory is something that we have to take account of, that there's some people who are not entirely literate, and the practice of putting an X in a confined space will pose them some challenges. And that's why as a candidate, you really have to ensure that you work with everybody in your constituency who you believe will vote for you and may have some challenges voting, that you have to get them to practice so that by the time that day comes around, that muscle memory in putting that X in that right place and overcoming any nervousness that might cause that X to not look like an X, that has to be addressed. And I don't think we've spent enough time in the period between elections addressing this issue, because it's something that every time I see rejected ballots, these numbers, it's something that I find is a little unfortunate.
To interject for a moment too, because I also think that we have not been as inclusive to our full Creole and English population in giving information. We assume that when we give information that everyone in St. Lucia understands, and the assumption without public education is also a disadvantage. Even when we talk about statistics and gathering data, in our last census, we never even took time to try to find out what is the population of Creole persons in St. Lucia and how are we effectively catering to them. So we are labeling people as illiterate, but maybe we are illiterate in our approach to ensuring that the entire population is properly appreciated and apprised of what's happening today. C'est pour ça que je suis obligé de parler plusieurs Creole là aujourd'hui pour dire qui ça qu'a fait élection à cette ici.
But that point Rice is making is so important, Teddy, because even this whole question of Mete Tikwa, I distinctly remember, I mean, my father was alive at the time, and I lived in Central Castries, corner of Coral Street and Grass Street, and I distinctly remember there was a lady who came from voting very triumphantly the day of elections, and he said, Nuka Tiweyola, moi Mete Tikwa. So my father interrogated her and said, well, qui m'a voté? She thought Mete Tikwa. No, she put it for the opponent because you can Mete Tikwa Okoi. So not understanding that the Tikwa you have to put is for the person you're voting for, and not crossing out the person that you do not want there. And I mean, now it was unfortunate, but these things happen. So even things that you take for granted, hopefully this doesn't happen anymore. Yeah, but this was I think the 1992 general election. No, my father died in '86. So this would have been like the 1982 general election. And I remember vividly that was, and I just stood there and I said, wow, you know, something simple. Because Brother George was going around telling everybody, Mete Tikwa, and that's how the lady interpreted it, very literally.
Rise out, be happy. That speaks to the richness of our Creole, of our folklore. That Tikwa expression is just so, just so rich and so loaded when you explain to persons, visitors about the Tikwa expression, what it means. I mean, just the little cross. No doubt, back then, Jimmy, an attempt to simplify it to the persons who are not so literate, that is a little cross. Okay, if you have a difficulty, that the two cross and you get a little cross. We are joined by Rahim Augustine, who much demanded, much sought after. Rahim. Roger would indicate where we have him clear and loud and clear, Roger. We are looking at development and trends and how it has grown and differed. Certainly the typical politician, the path then to public office was the typical trade unionists were very popular. Lawyers were extremely popular. Some say regrettably.
Too popular.
That's the most common path. It's a lot more diverse now as we look towards the path for persons. We look forward to see the kind of makeup of candidates now, persons coming self-employed, economists, persons involved in business, being the diversity of candidates. Remains very democratic though, that the simple paying of a fee and certainly makes you eligible to enter for a seat, and persons really treasure that the truly richly democratic process, that there are no big barriers as we go. So we want to discuss that in a bit, but to avoid the regional context now, without politicizing it too much and showing any preference, we're very cautious before the 6 o'clock time to go into any opinions. But Rahim, you're very much a student now, a traveler of the world pursuing your studies. What are you sensing, as we welcome you to the panel, sensing is the level of interest in St. Lucia's politics, and what has them so interested?
Yeah, thank you so much, Stay, and good night. I think obviously people in St. Lucia, or people in the region, are looking to see whether St. Lucia follows the trends that have happened across the region in the year. Albeit I think that some of these trends point to some of the more conservative parties being able to regain office, whether it be from opposition into government, or whether it be government retaining, whether it be the Jamaica Labour Party in Jamaica or the UNC led by Prime Minister Bissessar, the opposition leader then as she was, as part of the government. And therefore you've seen sort of this unification of party mantras and party engagements with some ideological underpinnings. And I think to some extent the global politics as well as part of the United States of America causes individuals to think that there is this sort of conservative movement, right-wingish sort of moving across the world and the region. Again, I tonight will tell us the extent to which that is true. But suffice it to say that analysis isn't always as true, because in 2013 many governments across the Caribbean changed, but the Barbados context remained the same. Earlier this year, I think Belize also had elections and their government was retained. So this isn't always as clear-cut as individuals
Barbados
like to make it seem, for their own individual motivations, because of course based on what side you support, if you have a partisan affiliation, you will see this is where the trends are going. So I think people are looking very keenly, but also I think people are looking keenly because St. Lucia's had a history of this sort of one-term government for a very, very long time, or at least from 2001 onwards. And therefore, to that extent, people are saying, will St. Lucia return to what commentators call as that level of political stability? I at times share a different view, because I don't know that stability means two terms. I think the will of the people is the definition of stability. And in much the same way that the British Prime Ministers are turned out every 14 days or so, that is people expressing their opinion. So tonight will tell us whether we follow the regional trends or not.
Yeah, and certainly the interest as far as that is concerned, interesting point you raise, whether it's in fact a pattern rooted in an ideological current throughout the Caribbean, or whether it's simply incidental, that the victories have gone to persons of a certain leaning or parties of a certain leaning in the last few regional elections. That's left to be seen. St. Lucia, that has heightened the interest in St. Lucia to see whether in fact we are part of a pattern, or whether there is a separate determination as far as St. Lucia is concerned and moving towards it. We were speaking earlier on, before introducing Rahim, of the persons who come through. Riser, we know, particularly interested in the role of women in politics, reminding all our viewers that we will be going to the count once the polls are closed at 6 o'clock, thereabout, and at about 6:20, 6:25, we're expecting the first results. Doing some general discussion on context at this point without getting too opinionated, without in any way slanting and affecting persons who are still on the way to the polls. Riser, women in politics, where are we? Are we progressive enough? Are we doing enough? The quota pleases you as a woman very conscious on the involvement of women in the public life?
Well, generally, the benchmark is set at 30% of women's involvement in politics in terms of being represented in parliaments. However, if we were to do an assessment of women's involvement in political parties, they have always been involved. They are the canvassers, they are the persuaders, they are the ones that decide where their families vote, and they are the influencers. However, to transcend the glass ceiling into representative office,
They tend to vote more.
yeah, they vote more because
Your figures confirm that, Edwin?
yeah.
Which-
Although I wish there
more
was,
than men.
although I wish there was
vote
more
Disaggregate
this
that,
aggregate
yeah.
data to tell us what age groups, and so also go further and ask them in our communities, what are the issues that push you to vote? Whereas maybe versus a man, these are different issues that might motivate him to vote, but women don't just vote for themselves, they vote for their families, they vote for their parents, they vote for social issues, because they are the ones who, in a number of ways, carry the burden of the society. So nous avons femmes qui participent à toute la vie politique, mais quand ils parlent, nous pas qu'ils soient shy femmes. The difficulties also for women entering into politics, fortunately or unfortunately, is you don't really see the kind of grooming for women to succeed their predecessors in terms of coming into a winning seat. They might be thrown in sometimes, unfortunately, as persons who go up into strongholds against candidates that are stronger, or you might also see women put in because we could not get another candidate, unfortunately, although there are competent women who come to the fore. And then when they come on, the level of analysis that goes into representation of women too is also very wanting in our state. What emerges both from the official media and also from our citizens is very harsh criticism.
Of women,
of women. Men also get criticism too, However, the commentary tends to be very ageist, very sexist. It goes into the very personal and not necessarily what is the quality of this woman's representation, what has she contributed to policy making and decision making. You rarely see that. It is really more of an aesthetic attack or analysis of the person, but not their performance. And that is one of the challenges in terms of getting women to actually participate in the process in a way that is more front-facing. They are usually in the background, but if you want to see the change, our political culture has to transcend, where we'll elevate them to the same level of dignity as their male counterparts in politics.
Yeah, I hear you clearly that you're saying there are much harsher judges, that they don't often give women credit and look to women for gravitas and reliability and content in the delivery, but they see them more superficially. And so the net effect is judging them more harshly, a lot more for women to break through. And some would argue the same way that women participate more in the electoral process, they perhaps among the harshest critics of their fellow women that they go through. We mentioned the candidates and the spread of it as we come up to 6 o'clock, who has been the candidates nowadays, but also the issue of candidates. Two things. Do people vote now, Edwin, your research panel, your reflections, do people vote a lot now on the candidate, where we've drifted to? The candidate per constituency issues, or is it still the overall, the party and indeed the leadership? Are these greater factors when it comes to that in moving forward? And then also, as an extension, how pertinent has it become for the person to be of and from the constituency? Jimmy?
That's a very good question, Teddy. To be honest, I think it differs. I think there are some constituencies where the candidate is probably the premier consideration for the constituents. However, across the spectrum, the leader of the party is extremely important, and that goes way back. I remember writing an article in 1997 where I compared the approaches of the United Workers' Party and the approach of the St. Lucia Labour Party. And back then I said, you know, I think I used a basketball analogy to say that everything in the United Workers' Party with Dr. Lewis revolved around Dr. Lewis. So it was like a center and the others were just feeding the ball into him, as opposed to the Labour Party where Dr. Anthony, although he had a significant stature, but the St. Lucia Labour Party at that time also sought to bring out the importance of people like Mario Michel, Philip Pierre, George Odlum. You know, there was a very impressive slate there. And so, yes, it was Kenny Anthony, but it was all of the others around him, as opposed to the United Workers' Party in 1997, which was just Dr. Lewis, and the others seen as subsidiary to Dr. Lewis. This election, again, even the approach of the two parties, I think, has differed in the way in which they've promoted their respective leaders, and that's something that we can probably go into a little bit after 6 o'clock. I don't want to speak about it now since people are still voting. But suffice it to say that the leader plays a very important role in the likability and the electability of the party. But there are some constituencies. We saw it last election with a Stephenson King breaking ranks, and a Stephenson King not running as United Workers' Party, and certainly not running as Labour Party, and identifying himself as someone who was, leading a blue wave, and how supporters gravitated towards him. And Richard Frederick has shown it, even with the fact that he has had support of either party when he's run as an independent. So I think it's a mixed bag. You know, I think all of that to say it's a mixed bag. In some instances, it is the candidate. In many instances, it is the candidate. If you have a bad candidate, it doesn't matter who your leader is. It'll be very difficult to elect that person. In the old days, you could sell a broomstick.
The Comptonites,
yes.
The Comptonites voted
yes.
for whoever, and they weren't so discerning and discerning as far as who the candidates were. They knew that they wanted a certain man to lead the country, the Messiah, John Compton, and so they would vote then.
And you could understand in that constituency where Sir John and whoever ran in Mico North or Mico South would get 97, 98% of the vote. There really was a non-election there. That was almost by acclamation. So it was difficult to see someone else coming in, because the United Workers, and remember, that Eastern Belt was one constituency before. Dennery and Mico was one constituency. So John broke it up into 4 constituencies, and the support in that Eastern Belt, that banana belt, was extremely, extremely strong for the United Workers' Party. But I don't think you see that anymore for either party, where you could send up anyone and that person won once they're wearing a yellow shirt or a red shirt, they are guaranteed a victory in that constituency. I don't think that that's the case anymore.
Yeah. And we ask Edwin whether the empirical evidence, how it bears out, how it plays out. Some say that on observation that in certain constituencies, the parochial considerations, constituency, the footpath, the new road, and different amenities more important, personal favors, the retail politics more important there, whereas in some others, the more cosmopolitan considerations, that they're more interested in what the person or the party would do for the country and more national and broad in the analysis. Does your own research bear that out? That there's that distinction between constituencies?
Well, Teddy, generally there is a prioritization of issues that the electorate engages in, and typically that is employment and economic activity related first and foremost and by a substantial margin, right? So even when there are lots of complaints about crime, and those are in the press, they are graphic, and it engages our imagination, persons are still more concerned about their employment situation and economic the bread and butter situation. So that should never be minimized in any way. And secondarily, you will hear a lot of concern about the health situation, right? The health situation, the hospital, the access to drugs, access to medical care, clinics, and all of that, right? So these are significant issues. And then you will get crime, right, as a third.
In your surveys, you find that?
Yeah, typically crime is a third. Usually if there's a crime wave, crime may nick health slightly, occasionally, but it's not a sustainable thing, right? So after a little while, it becomes health. So I think that big framework, right, is ever present when it comes to people making their decisions about. And then there are the local issues like proper roads, okay?
A footpath, that means it changes
footpaths, availability of the playing field, and
water,
like for example in Swagel, the issue of access to water and water scarcity was an extremely big, and maybe still is an extremely big problem. So there are all these issues, and then there are candidate-related issues, how accessible the candidate is to the voting
or simply how effective.
How effective, how much access, how often they see the person, their relatability,
especially in rural areas,
right? Yes. So these are all very important issues that typically you come across, and if they are specific nuances about the candidate that they don't like, they will tell you, right? And ever so often the leader of the party has a role in every local election, either an enlarged role or a likability role or something. There are also likability factors that candidates portray, right? And that typically helps in the sustainability as a politician over time.
And there's another point, Eddie, that sometimes in choosing your candidate, you may want to blunt the strength of the opposition in a particular part of that constituency. Right. So, for example, if you are looking for a candidate in Choiseul and you are the UWP, you would want a candidate who would poll very strongly, or who might be from Montrouge, because Montrouge is a Labour stronghold. And likewise, if you're a Labour Party and you're looking for a candidate, you want somebody from Delsey, because Delsey has been a bastion of UWP support in Choiseul.
We'll come back to the point in a bit, and on to Rahim for the intellectual factor. In politics, in contemporary Caribbean, certainly St. Lucian politics, they've gotten a bashing over the last few decades of not being practical and effective, pragmatic and effective. You'll answer the charge, Rahim, your intellectual cap. But we're going to reports. We have two reports from Grosley and Babono on the action earlier today, on the field as the electors went about the voting process. Have the first report? Okay, not quite ready. We'll continue with the discussion. Rahim, you're speaking of the intellectual factor. Many have accused the intellectuals' involvement or intellectual approach to politics as not being pragmatic, not being results-oriented. And so, unlike the days when we were loaded with the intellectual factor, the 70s, the 80s, and so on, we've seen a kind of withdrawal. Your own take now on the place of the intellectuals and their approach to the place in politics.
Yeah. I think obviously the intellectual always has an appeal, obviously naturally among intellectuals anyway, and within the country by and large, because it gives the country a sense of an air of superiority, to use that term, among other countries. But I worry that at times there is the intellectual who is not able to relate to ordinary struggles and may frame it in esoteric language, as I am doing right now, guiltily so, and which doesn't resonate with people on an everyday basis, which is problematic. So I observed, obviously, within the campaign, individuals speaking very heavily of economic policy and social policy, language that suggested to me that they were going up for presidents of the European banks and the Caribbean Development Bank, and I don't mean it in a disparaging way, but just to say that we must understand how to engage with people about very critical issues. And it's not a problem of intellectualism per se, but it's just a question of being able to reframe things and get people to understand in a very real way that this is the language for what it is that you're feeling. Because the truth is, there are many rules of science and many rules of economics that individuals, ordinary people, may not be able to explain in that language, but they feel it every day. And they know it. So they know what the taxes are doing to them. They know what inflation is doing to them. They know what a disinflationary policy is without being able to call it that. And I think at times there needs to be that level of engagement within our politics. And I've always made the point that I think at times individuals are very keen on just sort of coming out of the bathroom and just jumping into politics, believing that you can just enter and say and engage in that way, as opposed to submitting themselves to a very deep process of public speaking, of communication, of these things that allow people to understand you, because you will not be able to be related, especially in a context where you have a country which doesn't have very informed debates among political leaders, a country that the part of the political culture is a lot of platform speaking, and it's certainly not the platform speaking is not a place where all of the intellectuals go to have coffee, but I think these are some of the issues that over time some of the candidates as part of the election need to work on, and they need to work with ordinary people to do it, because I think that may be affecting some of their own deliverability and their own success at the polls.
Yeah, well, we're at it, the youth vote. Another constituency that we throw at you. The youth vote, often almost cliched, persons speak of recognizing, acknowledging the youth vote. How you think, how efficiently and effectively that's been, and respectfully that's been treated in the Caribbean. Let's do it more broadly first, and St. Lucia.
Yeah, I think in some respects, young people, first of all, I think the data needs to be disaggregated, right? Let's start there. I don't think we've gotten particular data from across the region that gives you a very quantifiable way of knowing how many young people have engaged in the voting process. But at times I worry also that the young people as part of the process are engaged in a sort of piecemeal, anti-intellectual way, that they're engaged in as part of the fanfare of Caribbean politics, which is a very fundamental part, which I totally enjoy and love. I think it's a firm part of Caribbean culture and it should never wither away. But I worry that they too are not being taken seriously as intellectual components as part of the process, whether it be as part of candidate selection, whether it be as part of manifesto creation, whether it be as part of engagement as part of the political party, the reframing of the policies, beyond just the sort of mere canvassing and searching for votes among individuals. The truth is, I think at times politicians believe that the demographic doesn't come out in a very massive way. They don't have the data that suggests to them that these individuals are coming in a mass way. So the middle-aged individuals are those they may target more, because these are people that they could count on, that have familial ties to the party, that over time have been loyal and faithful supporters. They're coming to the rallies, etc. So these are the individuals that they can count on. But what I witnessed this far in this campaign suggests to me that young people are part of the campaign rallies. They are part of the production of music as part of the campaigns. I saw some very young faces as part of the rallies that I don't know that they're 18 years old to vote either way. And we've seen a lot of videos as part of our own political terrain which sees young children singing campaign songs and engaging in that process. So that is why I see these sort of young people fitting within it. And if you look at the candidates again, you may not see individuals within that 20 and early 30s bracket as well that indicate a very strong sense of engagement of young people. Probably as canvassers, probably as part of the youth arms in the parties, probably as part of the foot soldiers, but not embedded within the political parties themselves or part of the process.
There's something I want to interject to your points, which I support, is the fact that if we want to see young people more integrated in the political process, they have to be integrated not just during general elections. And that also begs the question of young people in civil society and the agencies to represent them. For example, the National Youth Council. Where is the role, or what is the role of National Youth Council in ensuring that youth voices are represented not just in parties, but in their own organization that represents them? That's a question that we must ask. And even in our school systems, are young people properly apprised of what their role is? As an educator, when I have discussions with my students about their vote, many times their participation is influenced by their parents, and it's also limited by the fact that many persons also have a limited view of what politics is. They get their education from their parents, and maybe what they might listen to might be one program, and that is about it. And maybe later on, as Ryan mentioned, the popularization of music or the Denry segment, or maybe a few pop-ups of social media influencers as the voices to really engage, but to say that they understand the thing that we are dissecting here, it is not something that is brought forward in the education sector in a formative way, or even in other aspects when we think about national development, so that they have a stake, because we want them to be engaged, not just when there's general elections, but throughout St. Lucia's national development. And that's an important point that we must bring forward.
Well, what I can tell you
We'll get back to you, Ryan, in just a bit, but the producers are ready and screaming to run a report from Micoud North from earlier today. Micoud North.
And we are here in Micoud North, and we are, of course, making sure that we keep you upbeat with what's happening for election 2025. Here, we have heard quite a few people came in early on. We saw numbers, according to the officer, that has been unprecedented. She said, and I quote, that it is probably some of the largest numbers she has seen in our history, which shows that the eagerness is there and the excitement is rife for election 2025.
The morning was very, very busy in all areas. Persons actually came out. We had elderly, we had disabled, we had all types of persons coming in just to cast their ballots early. So it was indeed very hectic for us. Polls opened on time, and we went ahead. We tried to avoid delaying the process. There are persons that we were not able to locate on the list. So what we had them to do, just wait a bit, and we attended to somebody else. So as soon as this information came in, those persons were brought in. They were not allowed to wait or to take the back of the line. They were brought in to vote. Actually, we had assistant poll clerks on the outside, assisting with directing the electors to the correct areas for voting. We also had the police assisting to ensure that law and order was maintained. So it went quite smoothly. Persons stayed on that line because they knew that they want to cast their ballot, because they know any rowdy thing, any rowdy behavior, they would have to go out and then relax and then come back in.
I am outside the polling division N5, and this is the Micoud Secondary School. Now today, according to some of the officers, we had seen unprecedented numbers as voters were eager to cast their ballots early. We are seeing numbers coming in, however, steadily, slowly, but surely, individuals are still coming through to ensure that their civic right and their duty is being upheld.
Thank you, Kendall Skadi Eugene, for that report out of Micoud North, certainly one of the constituencies with lots of interest, one of the absolute strongholds of the United Workers' Party, the father of the UWP, the founder, father of the nation, as it were, and the UWP thought then to have been unbeatable for a long time, and so a phenomenal development last elections when Jeremiah Norbert came through and won Interesting examples, as we mentioned, the candidates and the parties, and what causes certain drifts. One could look quickly at a stronghold, a powerful stronghold, a fortress of UWP in the days. Alan Bousquet, your question, Jimmy, about whether it's candidate or whether it's party. Alan Bousquet was absolutely invincible for so many years when elections. Once he left, and then the 1997 avalanche of tsunami, your choice, came. The UWP lost there, and since then it's been ding dong, and certainly not as garrison as it were in the old days. That was one example. Micoud now drifting and up for grabs, which was not the case. And also the thinking about what made certain areas strongholds. Why was the Micoud-Dennery belt maybe easier explained with the Compton influence and the banana belt, as it were, and loyalty to Compton, who really put the pressure on the plantation owners and really led, in a true sense, the struggle for banana farmers. But a number of others, the absolute loyalty through the years of Labrie, Vieux Fort North, lesser extent, Vieux Fort South, much lesser, but Vieux Fort North and Labrie. Why then? Why then, back then with Alan Bousquet, what was the magic of Alan Bousquet that so endeared him to the public? And these factors we could look at as we go through and get past 6 o'clock.
To the point where, Teddy, bellwether, Babonneau has actually now become a bellwether. But since 1997, Babonneau has never voted with the opposition.
Right.
Babonneau has always been in government. Whether that remains this time around, bellwethers are bellwethers until they're not. Whether that remains, the question of Micoud is an extremely important one, and I think we also must not discount the influence of what appeared to be a split of the Compton family, because remember, Janine ran not as a UWP in Micoud North, and I think that may have served to erode the support of the UWP in that constituency, because the Compton name was no longer strongly associated with that constituency. So that, that's one of the things. But you're right. I mean, why has is Vieux Fort North's loyalty to the St. Lucia Labour Party, is that because of Cecily? Is Cecily the one who consolidated
more
it?
historical, than beyond Cecily.
Exactly, beyond Cecily.
These factors are interesting. One has the stories and from the early analysts of the Compton, then in his wisdom, in his shrewdness. Saltibus was a UWP area, and so he took it out of Labrie and annexed it to Chazelle. Some would say gerrymandering, some would say very shrewd move. But what about Saltibus in that little pocket? What made it so peculiarly attached to UWP and ultimately to Compton?
As opposed to Labrie.
Labrie.
But I also think we need to consider, apart from community supporting a particular party, what has the opposing party not done to convince a community to vote? There are nuka kachile nuka palia sumanye Labour nisipo avefo, menupaka kachile ki qualité candidat floboka voye pour moun choisir. Yes, the reverse. So a number.
But that's
a wrong kind of mentality to have, because even in the discussion on the Micoud North,
both parties
in the Micoud North respect, I remember when Jeremiah Norbert was running, and some of my colleagues there were telling me about his approach, that he did not assume that it was a stronghold. He took every household seriously and approached it with that measure, in addition to other local factors, maybe the anti-government sentiment that was on the ground, helped to secure support. And I think an important point that you also raised, Dr. Fletcher, in addition to speaking about Janine Compton's running as an independent, is not merely a lack of support for Compton, but a shift in mindset that we're not taking note of, that is happening among our people, where we have a political memory that links us and gives us loyalty to a party. But when the party no longer serves the community in a way that it sees, there needs to be a breakaway, and many persons are seeing themselves in that light, that yes, we are grateful for the contribution of various political parties, whether it is the St. Lucia Labour Party or the United Workers' Party, but at this present time, does the party really serve or represent what we are? And the parties themselves are going through their own forms of transformations, where we see different iterations that may not match the value systems of a bygone era. And these are some of the things we want to look at in terms of the evolution of our voters' behavior, and also what the results are, where we see historic shifts, as we saw in Micoud North, happening in constituencies. So no constituency should ever be a safe seat, because you treat them with a level of dignity and respect by sending your best and doing your best when you're in governance, so that they feel that you are an option that they want to select.
And also the evolution of that
Just want to
demographic.
get back to that in a bit. We have a number of reports, as many as 4 from the field, and we'll be running them back to back for the benefit of our viewers. Let's go to some of the action from earlier today. As we approach the close of polls, you're doing the count, Riza. 6 more minutes. What do you have? 5?
We have 6 more minutes.
Let's go to the reports.
Until the official end.
Yes, to
Hello,
official.
St. Lucia. I am Claudia Monlouis, and a warm welcome to you on voting day, December 1st, 2025, as the GIS brings you the happenings on the ground. We are here at the polling station G4 in the electoral district of Ancillary Canries, and the candidates are Mr. Wayne Girard and Mr. Dominic Fede. Here at polling station G4, we are told that the atmosphere has been relatively quiet and calm, and the logistics have been flowing smoothly. We're taking some interviews and some perspectives from the presiding officer, other staff of the electoral department who are assisting with the flow and running of the elections, and some voters.
I am Dominic Leonti. I am an assistant superintendent of police. For the elections, I have responsibility for the Ancillary Canries constituency. So in terms of a law enforcement point, I am from Canries, and therefore the polling division and the 100 yards mark have been respected. We are, of course, in the safest part of the island, which is Canries, or I could say crime-free. And so, except for the little banter in terms of persons now realize that they could show off their color. So you see a lot of colors around, but on a law enforcement point of view, we have had nothing whatsoever, no disturbances, no quarrels, no fights, nothing. Things have been as quiet as ever. From 5 a.m. The place was packed, but as you know, voting started at 6:30 a.m. promptly, and then there was that kind of, I would not say long lines, but moderate. And there are different polling areas where you would find the concentration of, for example, the box where A to C and D to H. This is the box that has been constantly have persons on it. The other boxes, so right now if you go there at this time, 11:25, you would find that the L and the NZ, these things are actually free and open. So we are just preparing for, of course, the contentious part, which is when polls close at 6 p.m.
I'm Roger Labudi, election clerk for the electoral district Ancillary Canries, and I am supervising this polling station, which is G4 of the electoral district, which takes in persons from Anslavedi down to Belvedere of Canries. That is the area that we cover for the polling station. When we open on time. Started on time from 6:30, and we had a very, very large number of persons waiting to go and cast the ballots, and they were able to queue up in a decent manner, and the voting started well, and we did not have any hiccups at the beginning, except for when the data or the persons had to begin to flash who has voted and to actually access whether those persons are on the system as they are verified. And because of the traffic, the number of persons at the moment accessing it had dropped, but we were able to get it rectified through electoral department, the IT unit, and so the voting process has been moving smoothly. Well, with that being done, you had persons being able to come and leave because they have to work, and some persons who want to vote early and get it out of their way. So the process has been fairly and squarely. There isn't any kind of problem as much to complain about.
Okay, I'm Princess Augustine, presiding officer for polling division G4. This morning, we came here quite early, before 5 o'clock, and this was basically to ensure that polling started on time, voting started on time, and that everything went smoothly. We wanted to ensure that every sign, everything that voters needed or required was ready, and that the poll clerks took their oaths. So we came in quite early to ensure that this happened and to open our gates at exactly 6:30. We have about 20 persons on our team. 5 presiding officers and 1 poll clerk per station, as well as an assistant and a lines person. Okay, so coming in here, this election day is not an easy task, and so you always need to ensure that the presence of God is in your midst, and to ask for the patience and the guidance to deal with everyone that you will be encountering for the day, because we know what that's like with different humans of different personalities as well. So yeah, it was essential that we seek God. The polls will close at 6 p.m. At this time, the presiding officer will count the number of persons who are on the line at 6 o'clock. So if there are 3 persons left on the line, the presiding officer will ask the police officer to stand at the end of the line. The gates will be closed, and everyone on the line before 6 or at 6, which is closing time, will be allowed to vote. Okay, so this is what's going to happen. So gates will be closed. Once you are on the line, you are on the compound, you are in to vote before 6 or by 6 p.m., you will be allowed to vote.
I'm Kezia Charles, and this is my first time voting, and I wouldn't say that I couldn't sleep last night. I think I slept really well, in the hopes that Lucians would make the right decision this time around, especially as a student and a first-time voter. I listened to both policies of both parties, and I decided to make the right choice for my future, and hopefully other people do the same. So yeah, I haven't gone inside yet. I'm still waiting on the line. We've been waiting for over an hour. I would say it could be a little bit more smooth, especially for people who this is not their first time voting. They already know the procedure. You don't have to explain to every single person. So for people like me, I would say yes, an explanation is needed, but not for every single person. I think that's exactly what's holding up the line. Yeah, and since so many people with the surnames, A to C, that's a lot of people, so it could have moved fast, I would say.
It is plain, the issues are there, and you have to choose the best place that you want to vote, because it is critical and it's important for our country. And if we, as individuals, as people of St. Lucia, love St. Lucia, will do the right thing. What I will say to them, please, don't be reluctant. Come out and vote, because our country, we need it. Well, it was fascinating, but I'm thinking, I was taking a look at the ballot. It was too clear, so that people can see. If you don't cover it with your hand, they will see where you vote. It wasn't good. But I covered it and I put it where it belongs.
Yeah, from the reports and certainly the anecdotal reaction and we've gotten earlier in the day that generally the elections seem to have gone well and organized, the occasional incidents, but generally, as has been the case the last few elections, has gone well. It would be remiss not to go into the personal experiences of the panel earlier today. Edwin?
Well, I got to the polls just after 6:30. Went up to 7. The lines were not very long. I don't know if it was a particularity about the line I was on that it went through within 10 minutes. I was able to get to the various officials
Tell us where
they
you're coming
make
from.
sure-
Tell us where you were voting for.
Oh, I voted at the preschool, the convent preschool, right? And this is where I voted for the past 3 or 4 elections. Okay, so it's very familiar to me. And I could see walking down the road that all the posters were removed, right within the 100 yards area, except 2 curiously were still there. But I suppose it's sometimes impossible to get to all of it. The flags, some of the flags were still there. I suppose it's much more difficult overnight to remove flags and stuff like that. And they told me to take off all my electronics. And, I went and exercised my franchise, so to speak.
Show us your voting finger.
My voting finger.
Right.
Yes.
Is it that time?
It's 4 minutes after 6, so polls will officially close. However, those persons who are still on the line will still be granted the right to vote.
So persons are no longer, as they say, to go to vote.
No.
Those on the line will be allowed, but you cannot now be heading to a polling station. History, gentlemen and lady, we certainly presiding over it, that the decision night, as we're saying, it was decided today. In a few minutes, the results will start flooding in, as they did. They will indeed flood in, and the curiosity of the public and the electorate has hardly ever been higher as we went through. But quickly, Rahim and Riza, your experience at the polls today?
I'll allow Rahim to go before.
I think mine went smooth, actually, at least for myself. I may have been some issues of my own doing with finding my name on the list by virtue of having 2 surnames. So I wasn't sure whether it was registered under Augustine or Joseph. It turns out it's the first surname, not the second. Interestingly enough. So it went pretty smooth. I think nationally, however, we will hear some more reports of the very long lines as well, and the situation of the police over the weekend, which was quite
The mid-morning seemed to have been okay though. The mid-morning. Let's just try to make contact with one of our panelists who is remotely joining us, Cynthia Barrow-Giles, Professor Cynthia Barrow-Giles in Barbados. Do we have Cynthia on the line? Good evening, Cynthia. No, we don't have Cynthia.
Not as yet?
We don't have Cynthia as yet.
So
we can go in, Riza.
Continue. So I am registered to vote in Vieux-Fort South, and I was a little earlier than Mr. St. Catherine. I leve bien bonne. I parti bien bonne. Quand c'est mon nom, I tell 10 minutes après 6 heures, so 10 past 6, and the line was long. So there was great enthusiasm to vote in Vieux-Fort South. It took me about an hour for me to cast my vote. I did so with my mom, and then to prepare for us to be here today. So from all looks of it, persons were enthusiastic to come out early to make sure that their vote counted. And that says something about people wanting to make a statement as to where they want this country to go.
The enthusiasm in Vieux-Fort South, Vieux-Fort North, Labrie will be very high.
It is.
And that is because of that health-related issue with the opening of the hospital and how they felt marginalized to some extent. So I think that there will be some implications for that.
Candidates to both in terms of the incumbents and the opposition candidates as well are playing a huge role in terms of these elections. And again, when the results come up, you'll be able to give a more concrete analysis of the why. We're not going to predict or say anything that we're not sure of at the moment.
And you spoke of candidates, incumbents, this incumbency issue. How often, or if ever, has an incumbent government candidate increased his margin or indeed absolute number of votes? Interesting that someone in government, as the parliamentarian for some constituency, being able to increase their vote while during incumbency. It's often challenging to do so, to increase. Very challenging to do so. Incumbent candidates have, the likes of Philip Pear, as incumbent candidates from opposition to government when there's a national swing. But indeed, when you are, in fact, let's see this year, Philip Pear would be telling himself that perhaps he could try to reach other.
What happens with an incumbent is he has a lot more name recognition, so he can better fend off challenges.
Some might say more resources. Some might say the state machinery to be wisely used. There's no running from that. Running from that. But there's also the attrition, you know. And more people to please. Then you are the target. You are to deliver. The more pressure on you. They're more forgiving when you're in opposition, and you know you don't have the state machinery.
Well, the wisdom.
SVG could be an example of that too.
The wisdom is you start losing votes from the day you win the election. You know, that's the wisdom, because you see you've promised certain things, you have certain expectations. You, despite your best intentions, it will be difficult for you to meet the expectations of everyone. So from the day you've won that election, the very next day you start to lose votes. There's attrition. So you're right. I mean, this election will be very interesting to see, not just on the candidate level, but also on the party level. You know, what happens to the St. Lucia Labour Party. You know, there's been all sorts of talk about how better it will do or how it will do, and the United Workers' Party has also been countering of how well it will do. So I think it'll be very interesting to see whether an incumbent party is actually able to increase its standing over the last time. You know, whether that works out, as some within the Labour Party have been predicting will work out. That will be a very interesting dynamic. But going back to the whole thing about voting, Teddy, I mean, I have the distinction in voting in A1A. So that's the first thing that's on your list, A1A. And I usually, like Edwin and Rice, go to vote very early in the morning. This time I decided, you know what, I'm too used to getting on that line for 6 o'clock and staying an hour on the line. So I went to vote at 8:30, 8:45. There were 3 people in E2F ahead of me. One was in, actually voting. There were 2 people ahead of me. I was in and out in no time. So this was the most pleasant voting experience I've ever had. But the other lines, with the exception of G to I think, was also short. All of the other lines, P to Z, was a disaster. P to Z, there were people, I think, on P to Z all day long. You know, my wife went to vote. And she votes well, she doesn't vote in P to Z. She votes in the one just before that. And she told me her line was long, but nothing like P to Z. So there's some lines.
So don't they, I mean, have a voters list, you sort it alphabetically, and then you do a quantile.
But I think what they do, Edwin, I think what they do is on the basis, they do on the basis of the number of electors. The same thing we're going back to. So okay, you have 300 people in polling division A1.
Right.
So let's say you have 5 different polling boxes in polling division A1, and you decide you will go with 60 per polling box. But you're assuming that there are actually 60 electors in each box. Some of these people are not there. Some of these people might have migrated. So you might find that a box might have 60, but only 50 people on island, and another one might be showing 60 and it has 60. You know, to just simplify it. So I think that's a problem.
I think something else which came up, which was quite worrying, and I hope it was rectified, is this idea of the police vote in the South. I mean, I think it's common knowledge that the South has the most emergency personnel for whatever reason. But the Friday vote seemed to have been a very long and arduous task, which is akin to disenfranchising individuals, because individuals can decide this is taking too long and I'm going home. So it would be interesting to see, especially if it is that we have some of the data that will inform that level of attrition, that level of being fed up, to use local parlance, and having to stay very long. Of course, I commend the officers for staying for so long to exercise that franchise, but it must have been very, very frustrating, and something must have gone terribly.
But it should also be noted, Ryan, that those who were not able to vote on Friday were able to vote today. So, you know, but I agree with you that staying on the line until 10 o'clock and not being able to vote is frustrating, but they were able to vote today.
I mean, in any instance, I think the provision then even makes it even less attractive, because imagine if I live in Grosley, but really I voted in
What are divisions? There are divisions cut off. However, for the East and the South, as you rightfully said, there is a large proportion, not just of police, but also fire officials and others that had to come in. And I also think the issue from some of the complaints that came to me from persons who I know who are police officers and fire officials is that they do not believe that there were sufficient individuals at the polling stations to man the number. So perhaps they did not anticipate the number that actually came out. So there was a report that came out where an apology was given in that respect to approve the process, to improve on it in time to come.
Well, some might say they hang all our analysis and certainly dissecting, but in the end, let me throw at you, isn't the election, has it become really and truly for the average voter, elector, a referendum on the leaders, on the 2 leaders?
I think to some extent it is. I think to a large extent it is. I think, particularly in our politics, where the leader plays such an important role. I can't say he or she, because the only time we've had a she was when Dr. Morella Joseph led the United Workers' Party in 2001. But he plays such a central role, and it's so important to how people perceive the party. And I'm sure Edwin, as someone who has done polls, can verify this. But when you poll, one of the things you always look for is the popularity of the leader.
Yeah.
And in some cases, you see that the leader is more popular than the party.
Yeah.
So, and the leader then lifts the party up. I without seeing any...
Or conversely,
and without seeing any polling data for this year, I would be very surprised if Philip J. Pierre was not as popular or more popular than his party. Because Philip J. Pierre enjoyed the popularity this election that, you talk about this whole question about people improving on their electability. You saw that with Philip J. Pierre. So that is something that I think certainly has to be factored in. What role does the political leader play in enhancing the prospects or diminishing the prospects of his party? Yeah.
Just before we get the votes, the big factor we must consider, a major factor in the change, the progression, some may say, or the change dynamic in the politics, campaigning and so on. New media, social media, rise up. I know you're very keen. You, in fact, one of the antagonists. Let's go.
I simply study what changes take place in how we communicate and the evolution of it and who it's targeted towards. So information is very important to a voter. Nous passons tout partout à cette ici. So de là nous tout avait trois programmes. Il y en a Castri, il y en a choisi, il y en a V4. À même l'état puis nous social media. However, one of the challenges is now trying to ascertain truth from disinformation and also misinformation, where individuals, once they see something online, automatically it's true without even verifying. And then you also have the use of bot farms. So this election season in particular, I saw, for example, in official news media articles, a number of comments. However, when you click the comments, they're of fake pages. Over a dozen, and these fake pages are like by 20 dozen fake pages, some in Jamaica, some in Malaysia, and these things also shape the mindsets and the perceptions of people. So Leo West ayo kwe tout just et nisi compte a particular policy or action ek de laisse pas avouer. So how do we now help our populace become more discerning, educate them on what is true? What do you look for when you look at a comment? How do you read something? How do you verify that an article is actually something that is worth its salt? Because you want people to actually have real information to make decisions that change their life for the better. Because honestly, all St. Lucians, is my genuine belief, want a better life for themselves, and they're trying to make sense of what is happening in the political space with what they have. Now, if that information is not truthful, you distort people into sometimes even voting against their own interests, and that is very dangerous.
And then also, I think I empathize with the shapers of information, of campaigns. Is infinitely easier previously, Jimmy, when you were more involved, to channel information, established media, mainstream media, 3 stations, you channeling and programming. Now from all sources, somebody could derange the message, upturn a certain information path, and so it's almost impossible to control. You have to battle against it, and everybody is a media outlet. Everybody becomes a media outlet. The influencers like crazy, the fake pages, the party pages, and so it's just so difficult to channel the information, and then ultimately there's a demographic, particularly the under 30s, under 35s, you might argue, who depend on that social media and less inclined to go to mainstream established media. So it is really a riot of competing, not conflicting, but competing information channels.
There was something I was very worried about this election, and unfortunately we did not see much of it, and that's artificial intelligence. And the use of artificial intelligence to not just completely distort, but present a new reality entirely. I mean, what you can do with artificial artificial intelligence now is mind-boggling. You know, to recreate or create a new persona for someone and have them saying things in a voice that sounds like theirs. But you know,
them this morning.
Right, but by the same token, but by the same token, Teddy, I distinctly remember my parents telling me of an election. It's a pity that they both passed, so I can't get the definite source, but of a rumor being spread at the very last minute during an election campaign that one of the candidates had passed. And people actually, and they said to them,
Wow.
So that actually, yes, and that actually took root. And a lot of people did not vote because they thought that the man had, and there's no way to verify that he had passed. If I tell you a day before, and you're living in, and even in Castries, and this has nothing to do with a rural community, that this person has died. You don't have radio, you don't have anything. How do you know that person has died? So I'm telling you, so luckily that can be counted now because information is so readily available. But the converse of that is that you can create information, so you could create a new truth, a new reality. So that is something, and like I said, I was very worried about what artificial intelligence, how it would have been used in this election. Fortunately, maybe they didn't have the time to do it, at least the purveyors of mischief. Yeah. But it is certainly something that we have to look to.
There's also a bit of exhaustion with AI slop. Like sometimes when you see a video, you immediately get an icky feeling about it. There's something off, right? I think people are becoming much more attuned to be able to make that sort of distinction between,
And Teddy, there's also Edwin. Teddy, there's also another issue that I saw today. I mean, I went to vote, and I was asked to surrender my phone, surrender my smartwatch. I said to them, I don't have a smart wallet, but I surrendered my wallet also. And all of this is to prevent me from taking a picture of the way I vote.
However... And you didn't take out the ring?
No, well, I didn't take out the ring. I am wearing the smart ring, but I can't take pictures with my smart ring. But my glasses. You could be wearing Meta or any other glasses, and you could go in there and just do this and take a picture of the... Now, unfortunately, the people who are manning our elections have not yet been told that. But how do you now tell me if I'm wearing smart glasses, but I need the glasses to see, that I need to take my glasses out to vote? But if I take my glasses out, I can't see to vote. So these are all things that now, because of technology, we will have to find a way to factor into our politics.
We're looking at, as you say, waiting now for the first set of results to come in. They are due very shortly as we get the data coming in from electoral office from the different places. Your experience in the elections, Jimmy, many make the point that from your agents you do get a sense very early how you're shaping up in the election. In other words, there is a great propensity of persons to gravitate towards the colors, the agents' colors of who they're supporting. What during your campaign and elections experience was the indicator you used most to get in an early sense?
Well, I never went up for elective politics, so I only have to depend on what the colleagues of mine in the St. Lucia Labour Party, which I was in, would tell me. So I think there are two things, Teddy. It's not just the people where they gravitate, but you are also supposed to know your voter, because the way you win an election on election day is getting out your vote. You don't just go and bring anybody out to vote. You go and you bring your supporters out to vote. So your 100 yards people, the people who you have in the polling station, because when you go to vote, there you see people that are dressed in red and you see people that are dressed in yellow. Those are the respective agents of the parties. They, in crossing out, they would have an indication, okay, Jimmy Fletcher has come to vote. There is a very strong possibility, I suspect, that Jimmy Fletcher voted for the Green Party. So I cross, as far as I'm concerned, the Green Party has just gotten a vote. Edwin St. Catherine is coming, but I'm not sure where Edwin is, So, and you also should know, if Teddy comes in, who's Teddy voting for? So you're not just taking count of your supporters, but also the opposition, and you tally that with your 100 yards people. So you get it's your kind of exit poll of how your vote has come out, and also you are supposed to have a good ground game, and you're supposed to get your people out so that you know how many of your people you've gotten out, because you are supposed to do a mock-up by around 4 o'clock to check. Okay, boy, I haven't in this particular box. A lot of my voters haven't seen.
The jargon, the bank vote.
Exactly.
We go into some reports. We always like to bring the actuality from early in the day. Grosile, Babono, we also have Castries North, Castries East, Central, and also we feature the special arrangements made in certain of the areas for the persons with special needs.
Bon après-midi, cette ici, après nous, communauté Laguerre, à Babono. Après moi, je parler by Assistant Paul Clerk, Mademoiselle. Oui. Mademoiselle Zasha Charles. Bon, Mademoiselle Charles, dis-nous, comment a été commencé bon matin?
Well, bon matin, passé bien. Nous avons commencé à aller. Moun sorti dehors pour venir voter. L'année, c'était polling station qui était plus passé l'autre, mais nous avons managé et pour à présent, nous just ni pas chay comme un bon matin. Oui.
So, vous voulez dire un chay moun te vini bon matin avant de aller travailler?
Oui, la tenue plus bon matin, à présent, il just flowing.
Okay. La tenue pièce des agréments, désordre, tout va été aller bien?
Non, pièce des arguments, tout va été aller bien. Nous pas tenir pièce problème. Pour à présent, tout va aller bien. Nous pas ça rien. About cut that. Yes. Pour à présent, nous pas ça nous ni pièce problème, tout va aller bien. Oui.
Okay. So plus tard, les gens qui te travaillent, ou quoi la kay ni chay moun qui kay venir encore?
Peut-être well moi quoi because à présent tout le monde a taille so moi kay quoi that tout le monde kay venir après taille pour venir voter.
Avant 6 heures?
Oui, avant 6 heures.
Okay. Merci mademoiselle Charles pour parler avec nous. Après ça, moi ka parler by madame qui vient voter, et que moi ka just demander une petite question. Nous ka demander en anglais et qui ka répondre en créole. What motivated you to come out to vote this year?
Moi je viens voter parce que moi vote.
C'est ça seulement.
Oui, c'est ça seulement. Pour actuellement.
OK. So là ou quoi là ou venir c'est bon là la panier chay moun la panier.
Na monter un travail avant moi venir.
So we put a half day?
Oui, we put a half day.
Okay, wonderful. All right. Merci pour parler Bano. Moi ka parler et puis candidate là pour Babono, monsieur John Paul Estefan. Monsieur Estefan, comment vous aujourd'hui?
Oh, moi très bien. Moi a passé tout partout visiter toutes ces polling division et bagay ka gade très bien pour nous.
So what stood out to you most about the campaign leading up to today?
Well, the government has done an outstanding job, and then everybody recognizes that our Prime Minister, our leader, Philip J. Pierre, he's the man ready to lead St. Lucia again. And I believe when the results are counted, then the people of St. Lucia will give him a very decisive mandate going forward, managing the affairs of the state.
How are you feeling at this stage of the process?
Well, I've always been confident. The Labour Party has done very, very good work. I am well grounded in the community, and the people of Babono they support me well, and I believe that they will show that in when the results are counted.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Merci bien, merci beaucoup, Monsieur Estefan, and of course we're looking forward to results later.
Okay, merci Achai. Bien bon, enjoy your day.
Bon après-midi cette ici. Après nous à Babono toujours, mais nous Babono Catholic Church, the Babono Primary School and the Babono Catholic Church. Right about now we're speaking with our candidates from the United Workers Party, Mr. Titus Preville. And of course, Mr. Preville, just tell us how has the atmosphere been like from your perspective as you've been visiting the various polling stations?
Well, from the turnout this morning and up to this point, we've just gone past almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon. People have demonstrated a level of commitment to casting the vote. The process has been fairly lengthy, and there are a couple of things in my view that has led to that. In the case, for instance, of the polling division, the polling station in Balata, that is the Balata Combined School, there are only 195 or there are about 180 something persons on the voters list cast to vote there. And a number of people in Balata therefore have come to Babono to vote. And you've had, and between Babono primary and secondary, you've had a number of persons therefore waiting for inordinate lengths of time to cast their ballot. And the second thing which has led, in my view, to the fairly lengthy delay is, and it's understandable, but there must be a way to make it more concise, is the explanation that the presiding officer is duty-bound to give the voter in terms of instructions on what is involved in the voting process. So it could take up some time depending on the level of understanding of the person. So that is, in my view, one of the issues. So in the future, it's obvious to me that a more electronic system type of voting would make life a lot easier. We are not yet there. But I think between an overloading of certain polling divisions with many people and an underrepresentation of people in other, at least in the case of Balata, has, in my view, led to some delay. But the atmosphere has been one, I believe, that is characterized by people determined to exercise their franchise.
Mais comment est-ce que ça t'y aujourd'hui?
Moi, même moi, toujours ça comment ça relaxed. La panique de bagarre qui a fait moi pas relax parce que comme il y a de moi aller dormir en place bon Dieu. I sleep in the Lord's arms. I go to bed there. Moi lever côté moi avec Lila. Alors la panique de bagarre sur la tête qui a fait moi te casser moi parce que confiance moi c'est en Dieu.
Okay. Well, merci, Mr. Preville. Okay.
People were cooperative, but all in all, everybody did what they had to do, and it went smoothly.
So there wasn't that rush this morning before people went to work?
Yeah, there was that rush. Those were the agitated ones, But eventually, we sorted certain things out. We ensured that they were satisfied with the service, and it ended positively.
So you're looking forward to that after work one?
After work one.
Yes, and he's taking a deep breath.
I didn't take time to think about that, Hopefully it's not much because I feel like this morning we had a big turnout. There was a large number of people, and I guess now given the time is calm down. So hopefully later on, it's not as hectic as it was this morning.
All right. So another question for you, as far as people around your age range, can you tell us that you saw a lot of young people around your age range coming out to vote?
Surprisingly, I saw one or two, but not much. But I see you have one or two people who have one or two concerns, I guess, politically, one or two young persons, which is nice, which is thoughtful. But not really, not that much. But hopefully in future there will be more to actually come out and make a decision for what's best for the country.
And probably they went to the other polling stations in Babono?
Probably.
All right. So thank you very much for speaking with us, Malik. And of course, hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
No problem. It's a pleasure. You as well.
Thank you. Bonjour, c'est Lissi, and of course, welcome to this historic day, December 1st, 2025, Election Day in St. Lucia. I am your host, Ika Fergus, representing GIS for today, and I am outside polling division A1, which is the Groves Lake Primary School. Now, the atmosphere right about now is very calm. I guess the rush has already passed, but the polling officer, who is Mr. Hilton Okilier, will give us, a little more detail on what has happened so far. Hi, bonjour, Mr. Okilier.
Bonjour, bienvenue.
Okay, so Mr. Okilier, tell us, how did the opening of the poll go this morning?
This morning we started on time, 6:30. My staff, both polling poll clerk and assistant and agents, were sworn in by 6:05. And we were ready. We started receiving our very first person who was already waiting at 6:30 sharp. Our G2I has been steady but not rushed. Presently there's nobody there. There's a lull right now, but we have had no challenges. We have had no issues. We have had no disturbances.
Wonderful. So can you say there was like a big rush this morning because persons wanted to vote before they go to work?
There was a line, but not in G2I.
Okay.
But I could see it around, but we have been flowing steady.
Wonderful, wonderful. And of course, any challenges managing any lines?
So far, from my advantage point where I can see a few lines, I can see there's still some people, but we don't have any challenges so far. Yes.
So looking forward to continuing the process until 6 p.m.
We're anticipating after work that we'll get the line having a backlog, because people who probably did not do it this morning, when they come in after work, they will continue to exercise their rights.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Hilton Okelia, who is the polling officer, or one of the polling officers for polling division A1 at the Grizzly Primary School. Right now we are at polling division A1D, which is the aquatic center, and of course this polling station covers the areas of Molave, Rodney Heights and Larry Twett. Right now I have the assistant polling clerk, Miss Nicola Alexander, with me, and of course she's just going to answer a few questions briefly while we have people coming in. So Miss Alexander, how did the opening of the poll go this morning?
Well, it was very early this morning. We had to be here for 5. When I came, everyone was setting up, so it went well. It went relatively well this morning.
Okay, were there any delays? Any challenges?
No, we didn't have any delays, any challenges. We started on time. Persons were here very early, so persons were able to come in and vote. So it went really smooth this morning.
So I suppose the turnout. How has the turnout been?
Well, it started very busy this morning, early morning. So maybe around 9-10 o'clock, it started to get slow. Persons started trickling. Until now, persons are starting to pick up. So it's been fluctuating.
So you're definitely looking for that other bigger rush about probably after work.
Yeah, that will be a big rush. I anticipate there will be much more persons here after work.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Miss Alexander, and of course, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're still here at polling division A1D, which is the aquatic center, and right now I got a chance to speak with two observers from the British High Commission, Miss Quantrill and Miss Zimbani. Welcome, ladies. How has it been so far? How many places have you visited?
Well, it's been good so far. We've been through the Babonneau constituency. We've been through Union, Babonneau proper, Laguerre, Moshi, and now we're here in the aquatic center. It's been very well organized, very well put together. People, different communities have different feelings, atmosphere. Moshi especially had very lively atmosphere. Babonneau was pretty quiet, pretty stable. It's been good so far. Okay. Good to know.
Wonderful, because we're heading to Babonneau right now after we speak to you ladies, so most definitely. And you, Miss Quantrill?
I've been really impressed with the election so far. You know, it's been very calm, it's been very peaceful, people have been very respectful, but it seems like people are turning out in great numbers, which is great to see.
All right, so thank you very much, ladies. I know you have to continue observing until 6 p.m.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So and watching the election result with everyone else in the country, I'm sure.
So ladies, do enjoy the rest of your day, and I know you still have a lot of ground to cover, so looking forward to the best. Okay, thank you. It's election day right here at polling division A1C, and this polling station covers the areas of Rodney Bay, Montreal, Ridgeby, and Ridgeby Orchard. The speaker again representing GIS for today, and of course I'm speaking with Assistant Polling Officer Shoma Victor. Now Shoma, how did the opening of the polling this morning?
This morning the opening of the poll went very well. We were ready, and of course, yes, persons were here from 4:30. They arrived before us. They were scheduled to arrive at 5 o'clock. Okay, 5 a.m. this morning. We opened this morning we were supposed to open at 6:30. There was just a slight delay, but everything went well. The lines were very economic, just open. But gradually, throughout the day, kind of calmed down. Right now, there, if you watch the lines, persons who are standing there with the surnames from D to G. Okay, so apart from that, persons from A to C come, they go. All the others come in, they go. It's just that they go D to G because of the amount of surnames within that area.
Welcome back as we get our first set of results for the coverage on elections 2025. Riza Joseph, you have the first set of results?
For Rush Clark, we have 60 votes. That is Swansat. Stanley Felix, 7. That is Set. Richard Frederick, Swansat 6. That's 66. And Andrew Matthew, 2. That's a D. So repeating, Rush Clark, 60. Stanley Felix, 7. Richard Frederick, 66. And Andrew Matthew, 2. So these are the early numbers of votes for the Castries Central constituency. Castries South, the opposition candidate Tommy Descat has 59 votes. Ernest Hilaire has 155, and David Hurd has 2. So again, Tommy Descat, 59, Ernest Hilaire, 155, and David Hood, 2. We're just going to scan through to see if there are any others that have popped up. But so far, we have for Castries Central once again. Oh, Castries North. Castries North has been populated now. For Stephen Favre, 48. Howard Witt. Stevenson King, 97. Catherine is set. And Marcella Steed, the independent candidate, has 1 vote. No votes tallied yet for Gina Matthew. So Stephen Favre, 48. Stevenson King, who is the incumbent, 97. Gina Matthew has not registered any votes as yet, and Marcella Steed, 1 vote.
And we need to say that that's in C2. That's in C2, the Patricia James Secondary School, P to SM. That's the box, the ballot box, P to SM. That's yes. So that's what Rice just gave there.
Go back. Right on the earlier ones, Central and South.
In 1 second. So for Castries Central again, Rush Clark
Central
had 60. Stanley Felix, 7. Richard Frederick, 66. And Andrew Matthew, 2.
South again.
And that's 1 box.
Which box?
1 box.
See what box it is in?
Not as yet.
Yeah, I'll get that for you.
So then we're going to South.
Castries South. Tommy Descat has 59. Ernest Hilaire, who is the incumbent, 155. And David Hood, the independent candidate, has 2. And I think we also had, these are the early numbers for now.
Yeah. We're seeing in Central, of course, running so far between Rush Clark, the 2 established parties, Rush Clark and Richard Frederick. Richard Frederick from within Rush Clark, BWP, an independent Richard Frederick, 66 to Richard Frederick, and 60 to Rush Clark, and 7 to Stanley Felix in that constituency. And we had 2 to the new party, Matthew. And we also had in South, Castries South, Ernest Hilaire, the incumbent from the St. Labour Party, 155, Ernest Hilaire, St. Labour Party, 155, and 59 for Tommy Descat from the United Workers' Party.
And 2 for the
independent candidates, Hood.
And that was in the Lacroix Mengo School, F3 for Ernest Hilaire. That is the box G to K. Lacroix Mengo School, Hess School, F3, G to K. That's the result that came in. 59 to Descat, 155 to Hilaire, 2 to Hood, and there were, I think, 3 rejected.
Yeah, and that's about 5% of the voting population is where those votes are coming from in the case of Castries South. So, it's still, fairly early.
You see, the figures represent or the area?
No, the area the votes are coming from represents 5%. Right.
The area the Labour Party has done well in Lacroix Mengo,
Yeah, but relatively less well than the other areas within Castries South. So that is actually one I really, if this is completed early, I would want to see if Ernest Hilaire does better or worse than his performance of over 20% in the last election, right?
The figures from last elections in that area?
Yeah, well, from the last election, he won that area by about 20%, right? And the margin of that F3 Lacamingo is now 44% in his favor. I'm saying this is not, I mean, you don't write home about that yet, because that may just be one specific case.
And not representative.
Yeah, it's not representative as yet, you know, because, yeah.
The battle, and we're just trying to identify where, in fact, in which box did the Roche Clark, Richard Frederick...
I can give that to you. That is in E1, the Carmen Rennie Memorial School, A to E.
Yeah.
A to E, sorry, A to G. It's A to G. It used to be A to E the last time. Carmen Rennie, A to G. Richard Frederick 66, Roche Clark 60, Stanley Felix 7, Matthew 2. That is where that number is.
The South City School, as we call it, in the heart of the South City area.
In the heart
Carmen
of
Rennie
yeah.
School, 60 and 66. The battle interested the way the results would in fact come flooding in.
What it shows, however, Teddy, is that there are fewer people. There are fewer people who voted this time around, because the last in that particular box in 2021, Richard Frederick got 153 votes and the UWP got 111. This time Richard Frederick got 66 and the UWP got 60. So we're seeing a quite significant reduction.
Is that significant?
Well, is it complete yet? That box?
It's A to G. It's A to G.
Okay,
so I'm talking about the equivalent box in the last election.
Okay.
Which actually, this box actually represents a few more people, because you have F and G where you did not have that the last time. So at the box level, this is certainly fewer votes being cast in this election than were cast in the 2021 election.
Yeah, it looks like about less than half.
Yeah, less than half.
Let's go back to Riser. I'd like to double check that. That's really drastic.
I'm a little. I think this is.
Whenever there's an interference or variation in the inclusion.
You think that's alphabetical, because the last time it was A to E. This time it's A to G.
Yeah. So there are more people voting. There are more people voting in that box. There are more people voting in that box.
I would still reserve that seems so a drastic reduction.
I would be a little
interesting observation. Let's
see how the others pan out. But
that would be
well, I think you could be conclusive for that box. You can't be conclusive for the polling division. But certainly in that box, fewer people turn out to vote. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's look again, Riser, at the La Clery area, Patricia James Secondary School. The figures that we got.
That's for Castries North. We have.
Ram looks to see if any new figures coming through.
No problem. We have
some in Soufrière.
Okay, let's go to Soufrière.
All right. So we have at the moment 53.
Soufrière?
53 for the incumbent Emma Hippolyte, and for Herod Stanlisas 83. So 53 for Emma Hippolyte and for...
And to say where that is, right, so it's in H2, Soufrière Infant School, R to Z. R to Z. Yeah, H2, R to Z.
83 to Stanislas and 53 to Emma Hippolyte?
Yes.
And one rejected.
Right. They're happy they've improved, Jimmy?
Yes, one vote rejected, yes.
One vote rejected. So we're going over that again. Persons joining all the time and taking their own notes. They've been asking for us to just repeat it a couple of times.
Yeah.
Go ahead, right on.
That seemed to have been similar, similar to the trend in that box
last year,
as 2021. Although it was not exactly the same.
Let's say what we had the last time.
The same range of names, right? But the last time we had 44 SLP and 75 UWP.
Pretty much. Kind of trend there.
Yeah. It's kind of trendish.
Not too dissimilar.
Yeah, it's not too dissimilar.
In
from
that
the
area,
last
that
time.
particular.
Well, actually, the Deltas, the SLP is getting, I think 9 more votes, and UWP 8 more votes.
All right.
So it's almost the same thing.
Yeah,
almost the same
okay.
thing.
In that box.
It's
There
true
we
to
are.
form. Yeah,
Yeah.
True to form.
Castries North again, Riser.
Going back to it.
Denry South, eh?
We have Denry South.
Yeah.
Denry South, Varro. Denry South, Riser will give us Denry South.
Momentarily just scanning through.
For Denry South, you want
Go
me
ahead.
to
Go ahead.
go ahead. Benson Emil 33.
Louder.
Benson Emil
Give the
33
give the
votes.
polling division rhyme.
03.
03.
Clinton
03.
Mason
Yep.
Memorial.
Benson Emil 03, 33 votes, and Paul Alfred Prosper 45.
Wait again, go over it again.
Benson Emil 33
S
and
to Z. S to Z.
S to Z.
Paul
03
Alfred
S to Z.
Prosper 45.
That's Clendon Mason.
And unfortunately, Teddy, 12 rejected votes.
12.
Wow.
The difference between the two two parties.
Go again, Ryan, with that Denry South, please.
Yeah, so we have Benson Emil with 33 and Paul Alfred Prosper 45, which we know is Alfred Prosper.
I must say that in this case, it does appear that Benson Emil has underperformed
Okay.
compared to 2021, where the UWP received 51 votes. They now have 33. And the SLP, Prosper, received 45
The last time?
this time, and the last time 50.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so yeah.
He dropped too.
He
He dropped by 5, but UWP dropped by 18.
Significantly more.
Yeah, by 18.
I
But then
wonder
for
if that,
Beaufort South,
that
we have
indicates
votes for
any
Beaufort
vote,
South.
Go Riser. Beaufort South.
Beaufort South
towards their
for
candidate.
Danny Butcher, we have 91.
Again, Rice, say the polling division because people want to know where that is
It
happening.
has
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
popped up on my screen yet, which is why I have not shared it as
Where's
yet.
that?
Okay.
Beaufort, Beaufort South.
Beaufort South.
Yes. Beaufort South, we have 91 votes for Danny Butcher.
Okay, that's the Beaufort Infant School, E to I. Beaufort
Yeah.
Infant
Yeah,
School,
yeah,
E to I.
David
Yeah.
Charles, more popularly known as APA, the independent, has 1 vote. Liana Johannes
Wow,
Paul,
we've done well.
44 votes. Shua Melcho, 2 votes. So Danny Butcher, 91 votes. David Charles, better known as APA, colloquially, independent candidate, 1 vote. Liana Johannes Paul, 44 votes. And Shua Melcho, the other independent candidate, 2 votes.
Yeah.
91.
And definitely you see a drop off in the UWP performance there from 61 in 21 to 44, right, this time around, whereas the SLP drop off was just about 5 votes and not as significant. So there's a sort of a,
SLP dropped from 96 to 91, you saying?
yeah, from 96 to 91 and UWP 61 to
Those just
44.
join in, let's emphasize
from-
the Beaufort South again. So we have a
Beaufort
new result.
South.
90.
91 to Danny Butcher. David Troy Charles, 1. Liana Johannes Paul, 44. And Shua Melcho, 2.
Let's go,
Yeah.
Ryan.
We have from Babano.
Oh, yes, we
we
do.
have Babano B1B A to Z, the Balata Combined School. John Paul Estefan 50. Titus Preville 27. John Paul Estefan 50. Paul Leo Titus Preville 27.
Which
Actually,
which one is that
data.
again,
And now we
Ryan?
have
Updated data. We have 3 boxes now.
Let's go.
Which one is that? The one
That's
you just
Babylon.
called?
Okay.
No, which
Which one
one?
was Balata?
that's Balata.
B1?
That is yes B1B.
That's A to Z?
Yep.
What is it again? Sorry?
It was 50 for John Paul Estefan and 27 for Titus Preville. But we have also some updated data from the Debara Combined School before A to Z with John Paul Estefan with 123 and Titus Preville with 161.
Repeat the figures.
So Debara Combined School A to Z 123 for John Paul Estefan and 161 for Titus Preville. We
161 is the total number of votes cast.
Not yet.
Just review that.
yes, you're right, Mrs.
Yes,
Nkaffing. Apologies.
exactly.
So Titus Preville under the Debara Primary School, combined school, 37 votes.
Right.
37 votes, not 161.
And how much for
and
Estefan?
John Paul Estefan 123.
Right.
You have the total.
So we have a total. So
Rizal now gives the total from Babono.
So from the three boxes that Raheem just called out, John Paul Estefan has 353 votes, Twasa Seka Twa, and Leo Titus Prevail has 141 votes. Yon Sekawat Yon. So John Paul Estefan 353 and Leo Titus Prevail 141.
Teddy, that result in Debara is a significant one.
Yeah.
Because 123 for John Paul Estefan.
Yeah.
The last election he got Virginia got 69.
69. Wow.
And the UWP candidate got 61.
Right.
Titus Prevail has gotten 37. So the St. Lucia Labour Party has increased its vote number there by 54,
Yeah.
and the UWP has gone down by 24.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that's a significant result, and that is a
significant.
that is a
And
box.
that's a bellwether.
It's a bellwether.
That is a bellwether.
That box is a box that was even and has kind of, if I'm not mistaken, has kind of remained even. In 2011 it was 78 to 71. In 2016 it was 66 Labour, 77 UWP. So there's a definite gap that has emerged in this election that was not there in any of the previous elections in Debara. That's a definite move towards the Labour Party in Debara.
We have some
definitely.
from Miku North.
The margin was only
Miku North,
6%. Right.
and for the Miku Primary School, J to L, and for the Miku Primary School, J to L, you have Elisha Norbert with 61, and the incumbent Jeremiah Norbert with 68.
Okay, so
that is the Miku Primary School, J to L, which is within N4.
And there, it's almost a mirror image of the last election. The UWP is polling the same number of votes, 61 that it got the last time, and Jeremiah has gotten 2 more votes than he got the last time.
And
So
Miku is a relative stronghold of UWP. Even last year with the swing, it remains
68 now, 2 more,
very loyal to you.
and then the same amount.
Yeah, it's
61 for the UWP.
Same number of votes.
Relatively,
Yeah,
it has been a good area, strong area for UWP even up to last election. Go ahead, Rachel.
Yes, so it is 61 Swasat Yon for Elisha Norbert, Swasat Wit for Jeremiah Norbert. Our independent candidate is yet to register votes. Let me see if there are any updated figures for our other constituencies.
We've seen the constituencies taking shape so far. Of course, great interest. People are messaging like crazy. They want grows delayed.
As soon as we get them, we'll let you know.
We're anxious. Everyone wants to hear from their constituencies. That coming up very shortly. As we got Central, we got South.
I think this looks like we had 1 box for Central, right?
Right, yeah.
It's now updated. So Rush Clark now has 102 votes.
Which again, where is that right? So where?
the total.
I'm giving the grand total.
Oh, the grand total.
So we'll disaggregate in a moment. Stanley Felix has 21, and Richard Frederick, the incumbent, 168. Andrew Matthew has 2 votes. So
That's the total so far.
The total so
of
far.
all votes that we've received.
Yes, so let me disaggregate.
Do the total again?
Yeah.
Central Castries once again. Rush Clark 102. Yonson Day. Stanley Felix 21.
That's in E5. And go ahead.
So is that in a particular box or is that the total?
Probably a particular box.
Is that a box, Edwin, or overall? The updated.
164 overall from E5, and from E1 136.
Yeah,
right? And then you can break down the 136 from E1 into 60 UWP 66. Independent Richard Frederick.
So let's get the total we have so far for Central Castries.
The total for Central Castries is 300 votes cast.
Right, and what the respective figures, Riza? The public needs to be clear on that. The figures we have so far.
Just updated again.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yes, it's updated again. So
the totals, right? We're giving the total.
198 Rush Clark, Stanley Felix 31, Richard Frederick 317, and Andrew Matthew 5.
Okay, and for those people who want to know what the trends are, E1 Carmen Rene A to G, Stanley Felix 7, Roche Clark 60, Richard Frederick 66, and Andre Matthew 2. In the Anglican School, E2, A to E, Roche Clark 56, Stanley Felix 7, Richard Frederick 96, Andre Matthew 2. That same polling division, E2, M to R, Roche Clark 40, Stanley Felix 3, Richard Frederick 53, Andre Matthew 1. So that is, then we go down to E5, the RC Boys Infant School, E5, R to Z, Roche Clark 42, Stanley Felix 14, Richard Frederick 102. I do not believe Andre Matthew got any votes.
We have some new figures, this time from Grosile. Kenson Casimir 93, Marcella Johnson 42, and that's in one box. I think Dr. Fletcher will disaggregate what box that is for us in a while. So Kenson Casimir 93, Marcella Johnson 42.
So we've been getting results from 9 of the constituencies, and of these, the SLP is leading in 8. All right.
That box.
Just to clarify.
Yeah. What Raisa just gave there was A1A, the Grosile Primary School, M to O. A1A, M to O, Kenson Casimir 93, Marcella Johnson 42, 30 rejected ballots.
Wow.
30 rejected ballots.
And let's, how that compared to the last election? You have an update?
I think Babano also has an update. We have 4 ballot boxes
That's
now
a
counted.
lot. In Babano?
In Babano.
The total so far, give them the total right.
John Paul Estefan 451 votes, and Leo Titus Preble 179
It's actually updated now, Raisa.
Wow.
It's 583 for John Paul Estefan and 245 for Titus Leo Preble.
We have some
583 for John Paul Estefan and 245 for Titus Leo Preble.
We have some from Viewfort North.
Okay, I have an update on that also. It's, it's 861 for
God.
John Paul Estefan and 360 for Leo Titus.
Repeat them figures, repeat them.
For the whole constituency of Babuno, there are 832 votes cast. Oops.
No.
This is the total per candidate. The total
Oh, just the totals per candidate?
Yes.
So B3.
No, the totals. Yeah, so far.
Oh, okay. So I have 861 for Estefan, and for Preble
245.
I have 360.
360. So you're probably updating later.
Repeat the totals you have.
The totals I have for Babuno at this point, 4 boxes, 861 for John Paul Estefan, SLP, and I have 360 for Leo Titus Preble, UWP.
Right.
Viewfort North?
So
in Viewfort North, L2, the Piero Combined School, MO. So Viewfort North, L2, the Piero Combined School, M to O. You have 112 votes for Moses Jean-Baptiste, and you have 44 votes for Calix Ian Xavier.
Which one is that
so
again?
So that is L2, the Piero Combined School, M to O. 112 votes for Moses Jean-Baptiste and 44 votes for Calix Ian Xavier.
We also have data from Castries East from 1 ballot box. Peter Chico 14 votes.
Which one is that, Raisa?
Castries East.
Castries
Which
East.
box?
I have to fill in.
Castries
Shortly
East.
I will give you that update. Philip Joseph Pierre 109 votes. So Peter Chico 14 votes. Philip Joseph Pierre 109 votes. And for the Grosile constituency, we have an additional ballot box added, so we have 2 now, and the count for Kenson Casimir is 173 votes,
and
Marcella
78.
Johnson, and 78 for Marcella Johnson.
Correct, yes.
Would that still be in Grosile?
Yeah.
That's Grosile.
Still Grosile. Grosile town.
The ancillary has. I'm not sure if we've done ancillary before, have we?
No, we
have not.
Okay, so for ancillary canneries, we have the Millet Primary School G2A with results from A to I. You have Dominic Fede 59 and Wayne Gerard 55. So the Millet Primary School G2A, A to I, Dominic Fede 59, and Wayne Girard 55. You also have in the Tet Shime Human Resource Center A to I, the Tet Shime Human Resource Center 8 to I, 68 for Dominic Fede and 86 for Wayne Girard. So 68 for Dominic Fede and 86 for Wayne Girard. So that gives us a total at this point of 127 votes for Dominic Fede and 141 for Wayne Girard, being ahead by 14.
Yeah.
Give me those numbers again for the Millet Primary School A to I, please, Ryan.
Yeah. So for A to I for the Millet Primary School, you have 59 for Dominic Fede and you have 55 for Wayne Girard.
And Tet Shime A to I was?
And Tet Shime is 68 for Dominic Fede and 86 for Wayne Girard.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
What's the comparison in just a bit?
Well, the comparison is that the numbers are down. Well, no, it's not possible to compare Tet Shime because Tet Shime, where in the last election we had A to Z, they've broken it up to A to I and J to Z. So we'd have to wait for J to Z to come in to get an indication of what's happening in Tet Shime. But where A to I is concerned, where the SLP vote is 59 and the UWP vote is 55, the SLP vote has gone down by 64. No, again, that's not correct because again we had A to Z, so that has also been broken. So it's too early to tell for either one of these two polling divisions what is happening.
We have some figures for Dennery North.
Dennery North?
Yes,
You want me to go ahead with this one?
I will give the grand total and you will break down what box that is.
So do you want me to do that first?
Go right ahead.
Okay. So in Dennery North, we have P5, that's the Olio Combined School. H2L, you have 102 for the incumbent, Sean Edward, and you have 96 for Bradley Marcel Fulgence. You have 102 for Sean Edward and 96 for Bradley Marcel Fulgence. That is the Olio Combined School H2L.
Okay. Sean has basically kept his numbers. He's gone up by 6 and the UWP has gone down by 11.
Yeah, that seems to be a national thing.
Olio is an area where UWP normally performs well in Olio.
We have some Castries East. I'm not sure if we've done it as yet.
We did one.
Olio is usually a bellwether. Olio is kind of has been even the last two elections.
No,
there's not been much to separate. Used to be traditionally, but the last two elections has been even.
For Soufrière.
Okay, and also Castries South.
Do you have some more numbers?
Let's do Soufrière. We have an update for Soufrière, Riza?
Yes, I'll give the total by Rahim gives us the box. Emma Hippolyte, the incumbent, has 201 votes. Herod Stanislas, 246 votes.
Okay, so Ryan, can you give us that breakdown?
Yeah, tell me which one we had previously.
We've had Soufrière Infant School.
Okay.
That is R to Z. We've had that one.
So that means this is Soufrière Primary. So in Soufrière Primary, H1, SO to Z.
Right.
70 votes for Emma Hippolyte and 91 for Herod Stanislas. So 70 votes for Emma Hippolyte and 91 for Herod Stanislas, which provides Herod Stanislas with an overall lead of 45 at this point.
So
yeah, but what in that box H1 is more UWP.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, by about 13%, and those specific name ranges. Emma has actually outperformed in those specific name ranges, even if overall the Soufrière
H1 is the strongest UWP polling division.
Definitely.
We have three boxes now. We have some updated figures for Mikud North. While Rhyme goes to the breakdown, I'm going to give the grand total of what we have thus far for free ballot boxes. Elisha Norbert, 186 votes. Jeremiah Norbert, 296.
Repeat the overall, repeat it.
So Elisha Norbert, 186. Jeremiah Norbert, 296.
Overall.
Okay. So give us a breakdown, Ryan.
So the breakdown for the Mikud North constituency, N2, the decommissioned Monrepo RC Combined School, A to E, Elisha Norbert 61 and Jeremiah Norbert 100. So that's 61 to Elisha Norbert and 100 to the incumbent Jeremiah Norbert. I think we've done the Passiers Combined School.
No,
we've not.
No.
Okay, so the Passiers Combined School also has some information that is N3 J to L. So you have 64 for Elisha Norbert and 128 for Jeremiah Norbert.
We do to jump to Castries southeast.
Okay.
Southeast.
Jawahir versus Guy Joseph.
So the total, and I'll allow Ryan to
I
do
can
the
get
breakdown.
disaggregated for you.
Lisa Jawahir, 206 votes. Guy Joseph, 168 votes. That's out of 2 ballot boxes, and Rahim will provide us with what these ballot boxes are. Lisa Jawahir, 206 votes. Guy Joseph, 168 votes.
So you have here in the Castries Southeast constituency, Q3, the Bexar Primary School, Q3, Bexar Primary. In N to R, Lisa Jawahir, 60, and Guy Joseph, 62. That's the Bexar Primary School, Q3, Lisa Jawahir, 60, and Guy Joseph, 62. You also have in Q6, Badichose Preschool. You have A to E, 146 for Lisa Jawahir and 106 for Guy Joseph. So that brings the total up to 206 for Lisa Jawahir and Guy Joseph with 168.
Give me that number again, please, Ryan.
The total?
No, for Badichose.
Okay, so for Badichose, you have A to E, 146 for Lisa Jawahir and 106 for Guy Joseph.
My keys.
Okay, so that particular A to E, Lisa Jawahir has increased the SLP numbers there by 11, and Guy Joseph has gone down from his 2021 number by 27. So Lisa has gone up by 11 on what Joachim Henry got, and Guy has gone down by 27 from what he did the last time.
Marcel Fulgens, 69.
We have some updates for